hello, Ann.
Well, hello, Mike.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thanks for inviting me.
And for those that don't know you, give us your name. Tell the listeners what's hot in your life.
Oh, what isn't? Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate the invite. So I'm Dr. Ann Arvizu. I'm a PharmD. I'm founder of RxER Communications Corp. I can well say it is a top global consulting firm specializing in global medical affairs, shared services, capabilities build, and operations for rare disease-focused companies. And I'm going into 22 years in the pharmaceutical industry. When I was a wee pharmacist, back when I was a tech and then an intern and a pharmacist in both hospital and community pharmacy. And while I was still in pharmacy school, I just decided I'm going to get into the pharmaceutical industry. I really wanted business and I wanted to learn business. If I would have stayed in either facet of pharmacy, whether it's hospital or community, I would have wanted to be on the business side of it. I would have wanted to be in corporate. And it just is what I think my DNA was all about. It's it comes naturally to me. So entrepreneurship came very naturally to me as well. And back in 2002, I started RxER Communications because I wanted to do what my tagline said, which is provide the right drug to the right patient at the right time through drug information. Back then we called it drug information. Now it's mostly in the industry, it's called medical information. But then there's other operational functions within medical affairs, and I've been a global leader to those. So I've worked for companies like GlaxoSmithKline, Baxter, Baxalta, and for example, with Baxalta, I was the global head of medical information. So I had team in 4 regions, and it was fantastic. But I also, I've gone back and forth in the pharmaceutical industry and out with RxER Communications. So it's been because my husband is in the same industry, and he's a physician in the same industry, and we do basically the same thing with just a different come from, different takeaway, but within medical affairs. So RxER, having my own company, has been great for me to go in or out of the industry and not miss a beat. Whether I'm outside with RxER Communication, I'm supporting the industry, or I'm inside the industry and I'm leading a big group. I think the biggest takeaway is having not only business skills, but the pharmacy knowledge that you have, knowledge of medical and the products, but also, this entrepreneurial skill set as well. So I love the whole thing. I love being the leader of my company.
Okay, now wait a minute, Ann. We Michiganders aren't as quick as you guys are down there. So slow this down for me a second.
Okay.
So when I hear medical affairs, dumb that down for me. Are you a conduit between the drug company and the doctors, and you're trying to merge that information to make it understandable? Or am I way off?
You are right on. So what the functions, okay, so let's take it up even a higher step. And that is, in the pharmaceutical industry, I would say there's 3 major buckets of what people do. There are the sales, marketing, we would call that commercial. Okay. Then there is research and development. And then in many companies, a separate part, or sometimes it's part of research and development, lies another group called medical affairs. And medical affairs over the past, I would say, decade, and before that, because I've been in medical affairs a long time, medical affairs is kind of like the compliance or police force, if you will, for the company. So they're the ones that keep the company compliant and keep the company focused on the patient, because who better than medical, who are healthcare professionals and providers, physicians, pharmacists, and many PhDs as well that have really a clinical focus and background, that have maybe worked in hospitals in the past. This is the concept of, when after a product has been researched and it's been used in a population, it's ready to go for market right now. Now it's finally coming out to market. So doctors are going to prescribe those products, and then pharmacists are going to dispense those products in some cases. In some cases not, because depending on if it's a therapy or if it's a drug product, etc. Gene therapies, it's something that maybe as a pharmacist we wouldn't hear about, for example. And there's some really neat therapies coming down the pike with genetic potential to cure disease. That's really a big passion of mine. And also to diagnose rare disease, which is a huge passion of RxER's as well. So going back to your original question, just to finish up, yes. At that point, there are different pieces of medical affairs, such as medical information, medical communications, publication strategy. So if you were going to go to a journal like JAMA, who writes those publications? Who puts them together? Who spearheads what is the process and the strategy around, here's the data that's come out. How are we going to create and present it in the most fair, balanced way? And that is all driven through the company. And a lot of people don't know where's this article being written? Who's it being written in collaboration with? Mostly it's with the key opinion leaders and the thought leaders out there who are prescribing and working with those patients. So it's a total partnership and collaboration between medical affairs and the key thought leaders and physicians out there that are working with their patients. And then to your earlier point, we are also dispensing. So medical information would be, I'm dispensing that information in a way that if a physician was going to call my office and speak to someone on my team, and let's just say they had a oncology product, that oncology specialist on the phone, generally a PharmD, would know more about that product than any other product. And they're going to give you the answers you need, whether that's an on-label answer or an off-label answer, meaning it's pure, transparent sharing of information. And you know what an off-label use is. But for those who don't, that would be something that's not on the label. But maybe a physician's using it in that manner, or maybe it's being studied in that manner. So therefore it's being used in that manner. So what data exists on that as well? And, coming clean with all of that, whether it's good or bad, because it goes back to, what is this right drug? Is this the right drug for you? And are we keeping our patients first?
So I'm gonna be a little bit stereotypical here. So you've got the smarty pants chemists that make the drug, but they're not necessarily good at communication. We're going to put them in with, some of us pharmacists or the stereotypical Dilbert with engineers and things like that. So you got that side. Then you've got pretty cheerleaders that were hired from college to be the salespeople who years ago they were maybe more pharmacists and so on, but now it's more of a beauty pageant. Now I'm just playing. You don't have to agree with all this. I'm just saying this in my head. So we've got
what people think. You're right.
So we've got these two sides, and you're the person in the middle that makes that all come together?
We're the team in the middle that does kind of make that all together. So if you would, stereotype that down, yes, there is research and development there creating the drug. I was in research and development for 6 years. So I've been able to take molecules literally from research and development to the market after running global publications plans, global research initiatives, clinical studies, and then bringing it to the medical affairs side. We are the ones that will disseminate that information when it comes out in a clean and thoughtful manner that it's good for patient. You can create patient materials, and you can also create mostly for healthcare professionals. So some companies won't. It depends on the product, but it's patients and caregivers that just have a lot of questions as well, right? I'm on something and I had a question. So where would I call? Because I know that there's medical information. I probably wouldn't go back to my doctor. I would call the company directly. I would look at the label and say, if I had my question, let's answer it directly from the source. They know more than anything about that product because they've created it. But yes, and in parallel with the field sales team is a facet of medical affairs called the field medical team. And those are PharmDs and MDs, sometimes nurses, sometimes PhDs. It depends on the company and what they're doing. But that field medical team would be able to maybe do a lunch and learn at a hospital where they're working with those top treaters to get them, in partnership, because maybe some of those top treaters are saying, hey, have you thought about this?
Yeah, right.
So research a lot of times is driven like an ISS, investigator-sponsored studies, or some people call them ISTs, investigator-sponsored trials. Those are where an investigator, a physician who's maybe a key opinion leader, a thought leader in his field or her field, decides, I'd really like to study this because there's no data on it.
Gotcha.
And so grants can be provided by the company if they go to that particular company or group of companies. Sometimes if there could be an initiative through an association, if you will. FDA provides grants as well for something that's unresearched, and they're escalating the grants that come through for rare diseases as well. I was recently just heard that from an FDA contact.
So you mentioned these kind of different lanes of the affairs, and is one of those lanes then, would one of them be branding, like deciding like, okay, we've got this drug that is going to help urinary incontinence, and is part of your guys' branding that even though men and women and children and adults, seniors have this, we're going to decide to hit the 40 to 60-year-old women and show them laughing at a family reunion, like those ads always do with that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Are you branding that?
We don't do any branding or marketing or anything. There's a nice clean line between commercial and medical, and it nees to stay that way.
Gotcha.
What we do, however, is you kind of touched on something else, is that, going back to who is the right person to receive that product. If a new indication is warranted for a particular subset or age group, etc., that would differentiate the label or add to the label later on, then it's the science part that would say, let's do that study or let's give a grant for that study. And then it's the science generating that, that would be added to the label later or would advance the use of that particular molecule.
So then you're like kind of the go-between on the medical side, and then there's also marketing, and there's probably also finance and so on, yes. But you're more of that go-between on the medical side.
Correct.
That sounds like something I couldn't do.
Why?
Laziness and and lack of knowledge, I guess. And you can't BS your way through it.
No, you can't. You become an expert in your field, right? You really become the top, and that there's board certifications. There is no training that can prepare you for being the expert. I remember years ago when I was at, it was SmithKline Beecham was my very first company. And I had written a protocol that was going to be studied in 10 countries. And I didn't even have a passport. And my boss asked me, okay, we're going to London next week. And I said, well, I would probably need a passport. They were like, you don't have a passport? I'm like a 28-year-old pharmacist. I'm like, no, I've been studying, right? So they sent me to the embassy. I got my passport overnight. And within 10 days, I was going to speak to a room of 800 physicians and present the protocol. So I was so nervous. And I remember him, and he was, a Harvard-educated physician. And he was saying, I said, I'm so nervous. I said, Clarence, when I present, I'm going to point to you and you're going to give the answer. That's what's going to happen. When they ask me questions, I'm really nervous. You're going to answer them. And then he looked at me and he said, Ann, who wrote the protocol? And I said, well, I did. And who did the pharmacokinetics studies and the statistics? And who worked with the other writers? And I said, well, I did. Oh, so you're the expert.
Oh, geez.
So people asked the questions and I answered them. Every single one. And he just laughed at me after that. And that was my first year in the industry. It was like a learning curve that was straight up a mountain.
Oh, yeah. That slaps you right in the face, doesn't it?
It was fun. Wow. Love it.
All right. So my brother owns a branding consulting out in California. And once in a while, he'll come in for a drug company and probably take that lane that I was talking about in the marketing side. Are you doing the same then coming in? Is that where your consulting comes in? Just as they hired him in as marketing, are they bringing you in maybe with a similar thing like doing this? But why don't they use their own?
It's sometimes a bridge and sometimes a stopgap solution and sometimes a necessity to either revamp or revitalize current operations.
someone screwed up in the company and they bring you in to save it.
Not necessarily, but it could be also that there's a divestiture or a merger or an acquisition or something is happening. There's change or something's coming down the pipeline and they can't scale that fast and they need help.
They're okay if they have one drug, but not 3 that they just merged into.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And sometimes it could be, it's really the expertise for capabilities build consulting at a high level. I'm brought in by the C-suite, by the chief medical officer, or by the head of medical affairs, usually a vice president. In the last 2 or 3 companies, it's been the chief medical officer that they call me, they know about me. It's just been 22 years in the industry, right? Do something long enough and you'll get known for it if you just keep yourself niched down. We talked about that earlier. And when they bring me in, just for an example, a last client brought me in because and my team because they didn't have a medical affairs team on board yet. They had a couple of the functions. They had started the field medical team, but they had no one to lead that field medical team. They had no medical information, no medical communications, no plan for doing business cases, no SOPs, no basis of business cases when you do a slide deck for senior management. So the chief medical officer needs to go to the CEO and ask for money, ask for budget, ask for headcount. And they need that business case to justify why that headcount is necessary, just like in any organization.
Yeah, right.
And you want to justify that. It's so easy these days to justify sales because you know that there's a return on investment.
Yeah, right. It's easier to see it happening.
Yes, but you can't see the return on value necessarily that medical affairs has. I think one of the key drivers of that is that medical affairs is what is the wave of the future for the pharmaceutical industry. You've heard that in my podcast, and that's going to be the feature of my podcast. But the predicted model is that patients are out there online just like prescribers are. And they're watching and they want to see integrity. They want to see pure data come out. They want to see that we're all in this together, that we're transparently sharing our data and our medical information. And so the value is there. So that's why I'm brought in.
We all know that the patient, once you're on a medicine, is like people become experts quickly on a medicine. You know, even as a pharmacist, It's like someone will come in and they'll say, yeah, my doctor says I've got this and I've never heard of it before, you know, and I pretend like I do by kind of nodding but then they know it deep, you know, just from that information. Johnson & Johnson was in the news a couple of days ago. They got hit with their $500 million lawsuit. And one of the complaints on that was the judge said they were naughty because they had brought out studies to the doctors and so on. And it wasn't clear. They didn't make it clear to the doctors that they were behind those studies. And it sounds to me like, kind of like you mentioned, people, they're smarter now. They want to know where, because let's say this was 10 years ago. Right. Now it seems like they want to know where things are coming from, who's doing it. It's just a smarter world right now. And it kind of sounds like that's right down your alley of making that smoother than a company like that might have done 10 or 15 years ago. Absolutely.
Well, whether it's a sponsorship of a trial or of a publication, that all needs to be documented. And then the other side of it is if there's medical information or if there's something that a tip sheet or an educational program or something that it's really the job of medical affairs to teach on all facets and all parts of the data. So there's that. We have to have open sharing of information. So as long as you reference that correctly, it's not necessarily just the FDA, but it's the Office of Inspector General. It's the OIG that monitors that and can ding a company if, something's found that's not fully transparent or fully documented, referenced properly.
I reference everything, but all of mine just say Wikipedia at the bottom. All right. So in and out, what did you mean by that, Ann? What did you mean by in and out? You can come into things and out. Does that simply mean that as a consultant that you can jump in at sometimes and then jump out of a company? When you were saying that you can, come in and out of stuff. What did you mean by that?
So if a company needs me in for a stopgap solution, or our company for a stopgap solution, I was contacted today. Someone wanted some medical writing, and they said, "Do you do that?" And I said, "Well, had you known me back then when I was on the board of the American Medical Writers Association, you would know that the answer is yes." And but right now I'm not going to do that writing, but I have people on my team that would. And so right now I just need to do a quick assessment and a statement of work and see if we win that bid. So that's fun. And that might be just, they need this little chunk of work done. And if they know, like, and trust you, and you've done a great job, which, we try to fulfill everything at the highest level of integrity, as any company would want to do. I think that comes with being a pharmacist as well, right? Yeah. It's like, it's in our collective DNA that we watch every little detail. And so, that's an in and out, but also in and out for a large consulting agreement where, hey, this is the year we build, and we need you to kind of put your hat on as our, temporary VP, if you will.
Sure.
And so I do that, or just monitor the team, or get our SOPs going. Can you write all the job descriptions? We did all that this year with one client, and it's fun. It's really fun. And so there's that in and out, but also going back in and out of the industry. I'm so involved in the industry that there's probably not a couple of weeks that don't go by that I'm getting a job offer for something. I'm just not willing to move again or relocate again. So
in other words, you would switch from a consultant to then actually becoming an employee of a place for a while? And why? Why would you do that?
I did for a while because there was, for example, with Baxter and Baxalta, my husband was going to be moving across the country to Chicago, and we said, fine, we're going to keep our home in Florida, but we'll try this whole thing and it'll be for your sake. And the company reached out to me, and they actually had, hey, we have this global head. We think that you'd be able to really spearhead this position. And so because it was a global head position, and I'd be able to hire directors in 4 different regions, and I built a team of 30 people, all pharmacists and MDs, within 18 months, I had a great challenge. And it came in a personal time that, I wanted to kind of hang up the RxER hat and not drive it so much.
Yeah.
Then I went through a personal health issue. So it was like, I just need to just do this thing. I'm moving to Chicago. It'd be better for me to go into the office and be with people than, and get through this stuff. So I did that.
Doing your own thing. I mean, pharmacy, I become spoiled because you get something going, and eventually they're coming in. But for people that are, not that you're literally pounding the pavement, but when you're doing that on your own, you gotta keep that fishing line out all the time, because you don't want to rest on your laurels. I've got a brother-in-law in the building business, and he hates writing out proposals and things because it's like expensing everything out. Are you at the stage where you're just getting requests, or do you have is there like a database where you're finding requests for proposals for other companies like yours, and you're trying to win the business? Do you have a little bit of both still?
A little bit of both. So we'll get into a situation where there's an RFP, a request for proposals, and we'll be trying to win that bid, or it's just work comes to me, and I don't take that lightly or for granted. For me, it's a blessing. And it's because you've been in the trenches for 22 years doing the same thing, and you're just known as an expert. And so I've never been without work. That one time when I went back into the industry, I knew that it was going to be a temporary 2-year thing. Yeah. And I came out a lot harder and stronger and ready to go, so it was so good developmentally for me that it also put me on a higher level game playing field. So I think it's great to have, even in the industry, whether I had on my team in the past a pharmacist who was maybe doing medical information, they might keep their paw in community pharmacy and work there 1 day a week because you want to have the flexibility in career, and that's something that's so great about pharmacy. I love being a pharmacist, and I love that we have options.
Yeah. I didn't comment back on your comment about why you'd work for a company, and that makes a ton of sense. And you kind of have access to the smorgasbord of people, of hiring and setting up things better than you could if you came in and had to always just recommend that. You can actually do that. So that's pretty cool. Are your RFPs a pain in the rear, or is it the building industry? I mean, you've got to say how many nails you're using and how much wood costs at this time and that kind of stuff. Are your RFPs a huge deal or not?
I think they're okay because we've done it so long and so well now, and we are so niched down that it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel. And I think that's a huge, if there's listeners out there, if there are listeners out there that are pharmacists that have their own businesses, it's always good to niche down and then you're asked to do other things. Right. But you start with I'm just doing this. I stay in this hole. And then it's like, well, do you do R&D? And can you speak about this? And I get, a keynote invitation, or I get a job that's bigger than that. And the other initiative, the other podcast that I mentioned to you before we started the call is about women's leadership. And that's a subsection of what I do because you're recognized for something else. Like some of the calls, even a consulting call, can turn into, oh gosh, I just want to kind of let my hair down on this call, and someone just will trust me. And it's a safe place for another leader, an executive woman, to just say, oh my gosh, I'm tired. Right. What can we do together to think about organizational design that would be a little leaner and happier for everyone all around?
Yeah. As school's starting now, you're like the third grade teacher that has got to use her lessons plan at least for 3 or 4 years. And then someone, it's not like someone's going to come and say, now you're moving to 8th grade, because that's a pain in the, then you got to like reinvent it all again, So you're staying with 3rd grade, for a while. And I noticed in your work history, I know you said that you had some time in retail and hospital, but it seemed that you jumped pretty quickly from like an internship right into this stuff. So you knew you were going here, right?
I knew. Now this is back, Mike, in the day of the typewriter. Okay. So it wasn't easy to just point and click and send out 10 resumes in a day. I went and drove door to door to Wyeth and SmithKline Beecham with my typed out resumes in little manila envelopes to whom it may concern, and humbled myself and got in and just decided this is where I belong. And it was a knowing all through pharmacy school. And I'm sure other people are like this too. Once you know a pharmacist, like that pharmacist is probably related to other pharmacists. Sure. So my brother's a pharmacist, my niece is a pharmacist, my nephew's a pharmacist, my nephew's wife is a pharmacist, my other niece is a nurse, et cetera, et cetera. My sister-in-law is a nurse, my husband's a physician. It's like we're all in this family, but when you know where you're supposed to be, none of them had that knowing. It's just, well, where I'm going to get a job. Right. And mine was, I'm getting in the industry and I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. So I started off at Wyeth. I said, okay, I'm going to do a temporary job. And that led to another temporary job at SmithKline Beecham. And that was a document specialist in a clinical science setting. And within 3 months of that, I was a clinical scientist. And within 4 months of that, after that, I was writing that protocol I talked about earlier. And within a year, I was presenting my protocol that I wrote then that patients were enrolling in. So I took it very, very seriously. I loved it.
When did you know that was your drive? Was that like before pharmacy school, or like into pharmacy school you said, hey, I'm going to do this part of it?
In pharmacy school, I went to Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science at the time, which is now USP. And I think it was my 4th or 5th year that they brought in companies to like a job fair. Yeah. And just because of the location of, central to Philadelphia, where there was Wyeth and Merck and SmithKline and some other companies, AstraZeneca, in that area, they all came. And I just remember being smitten. And that's what I want to do. So it was in my mind. I didn't even know what the roles were. I wasn't able to articulate what we talked about earlier, the difference between commercial or marketing or research and development or medical affairs or anything that medical affairs did. And it was still forming at the time. But I just knew that was where I wanted to go. And no matter what I do, I'm either attached to this industry at the hip, serving it or in it and leading. And that's just such an honor. So I know it's a misunderstood industry. It's like tech and biotech, pharma, big pharma is misunderstood in terms of, hey, there's some really dedicated, smart people, caring about patients. The term is patient centricity, putting it at the center of all you do and making sure that diagnosis happens and that the cause of science is further. In rare disease, there's over 7,000 rare diseases on planet Earth today. And the majority of them are misdiagnosed, or it takes them up to 12 to 17 years to receive a diagnosis.
Right.
And by that time that patient receives a diagnosis, they're already well on the way of irreversible care.
Yeah, right.
And so when there is some kind of a genetic marker or disorder, sometimes it's palliative care. Sometimes if FDA can help push through a new therapy that it takes a long time to study a product or a therapy genetically, it takes a lot of information, a lot of team, and a lot of money, and a lot of time and effort. So research and development is not an easy thing, and people don't understand it. This is not human guinea pigs. This is people that we're giving them a chance to receive a potential therapy that scientifically has been shown way before it ever enters their bloodstream or, their mouth or their arm in a vein, whatever. Before it ever enters their body, it's been tested and somewhat proven. And it's giving them a chance at life and changing that life. So XLH is a prime example of that. There's a company called Ultragenyx. That's the company that my husband works for. And creating gene therapy for patients around the world that have XLH and helping kids walk that otherwise wouldn't walk, right?
Right.
This is really stuff that's worthwhile to me as with my heart as a pharmacist.
Yeah, really. It's worthwhile when you look at it when you look at it that side. And sometimes in the industry, the big boys, really, no matter who you are, can get kind of a bad rap. Mm-hmm. What was your degree in your first degree in your international people, cultures, and politics? Was that something you thought of before pharmacy? And here's why I bring it up, Anne. Yep. I'm going to guess that you read books, you're a good writer, you're a good communicator, obviously you're a good speaker, and I think that I would put you'd have to be in the top 5% of your pharmacy class with those kind of skills. Do you think you were?
I was until in my very last year of pharmacy school, my mom died of cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so I remember those pharmacology tests where I just filled in the blank with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and at the very end, lost any form of honor and placement, but was able to make those credits up with zero transfer in. So they didn't count to fix my GPA, but those grades after my mom died that I had to go, to St. John's that summer in New York. And those grades were straight A's. So yes, nice. Like 100% straight A's.
But besides being smart, though, you can read a lot of fiction?
Not so much fiction, but I should read a lot of books. So you can see behind me, the listeners can't see it, but just like you, I see a bookshelf behind your head too.
That's all, that's Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys back there, I think. But you're a good reader. But I mean, if I sat you down in your pharmacy class, all right, and said, everybody write a story or write out this or that of whatever it is, you were going to be in the top 5%. I'm not talking pharmacy stuff. I'm talking your writing skills and you were going to be in that top 5%, right?
That I can unabashedly say yes to. My best friend from pharmacy school and I were just together last week in Nashville, and we were joking and laughing. And you know how pharmacy school is with your besties, that you get through the entire school through laughter. But we used to laugh and joke when I had a paper to write, and that paper was do a 3-paragraph paper and it's due tomorrow. Yeah. And she had the same 3-paragraph paper due tomorrow. And I wrote 16 pages and she couldn't get past like the third sentence. And she's like, I'm never going to get this done. And I was the prolific writer that so I'm writing a book right now, and a book is a much more comfortable assignment for me than, in fact, they have to even tone me back and keep it in the outline and let's keep it crisp. And so my editors are working with me on that. It's a fun process. So I've written textbooks, etc. And, going back to your comment about the international communications, nothing's been wasted, right? So I've worked internationally, I've worked globally, and people, places, cultures.
Was that before you thought of pharmacy?
It was, because originally when we found out my mom had breast cancer, it was 5 years before she died. And I went into pharmacy school because it was when I decided to do that, that was my heart. I was definitely a scientist. I had been a lifeguard and taken, courses and all that for life saving and everything. So you learn some anatomy and physiology and everything. So I knew that was part of it, but I had graduated and my original plan was to go to law school. And I stopped the process of that when I found out that my mom had breast cancer. And I was like, I'm not going to move, because my option was probably going to be moving to either California or Dallas. I was looking at SMU. I was looking at Pepperdine. And I knew that I just needed to stay in the area. And my brother, of course, there's always a pharmacist in your life that says, go to pharmacy school. And so I think later I actually wrote a feature that was featured at SmithKline Beecham that shows nothing's wasted, that here's all my degrees. Here's now what I know, international communications. It gave me a leg up to go where I needed to go and be a global leader. So that was fantastic.
Nothing is wasted. I actually was in the, for a year, I went down to the Catholic seminary till they kicked me out.
That's awesome.
Then, they didn't kick me out, but they
not that part, but it's cool that you did something else.
Then I had some philosophy, more theology. Then I came back. So I had about a year and a half of writing, reading, things like that. And I never feel bad about that, of those kind of, skills that I learned. As a lifeguard, this time of year, I was a lifeguard for 5 years, my friend Dan and I, and we were at this elite club, and we're just some scroungy lifeguards, But the last year, every year we would repaint the pool. And so the last year when we painted it, Dan and I made an emblem. It said Dan and Mike, 1984 through 89. Yes. And it was like an ode to the two of us. And then they filled it with water. So all these Richie's people came in and they had to look at this like emblem to their two lifeguards, But, you're not only a lifeguard though, you're a master swimmer.
I was. How did you find that out? That's not on my LinkedIn. That's awesome.
I got my ways. Do you still do that?
I still swim.
That ties you into the YMCA board.
That's correct. I'm the board of directors for the YMCA in my area. It's a multi-center Y in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And it's been an honor to be just raised up to be the chair. I didn't realize for years I was a lifeguard with the Y and other organizations like a lake, etc. But I never realized that the YMCA was a nonprofit organization. And it's like you didn't know that. So now I raise money for this because it fosters leadership. It fosters swim lessons for kids in the area. It helps people that, you're not going to go to an LA Fitness and they're going to give you a break on your membership if you are a special needs person or if you financially need. So I love that about the Y, and I'm really happy to be the leader among leaders. We have VPs of Wells Fargo. We have the CEO of Kindred Health Hospitals, and the people, just people of organizations, Starbucks, law firms, just amazing.
I don't want to toot my own horn, Ann. You might be the head of the board there, but I was a guppy.
Oh, you were a guppy.
I was a guppy with the Y.
That's so cute. That's awesome. Then there's guppy and minnow and shark.
I think I became a minnow. I'm not sure if I ever made I'm not sure if I made the shark. That was maybe in the mid 70s when Jaws came out or something, and I decided not to go that route.
Fantastic.
What would you do all day if you could do anything in your business and was not tied down with any administration, unless you love the administration? But what would you like to do all day in your field if you could?
What a great question. There's a bigger issue that is on my heart, and it's part of everything that we're planning, a creation of a new business growth model called Corecentryx and called Corepreneur. And that really is going to the heart of someone who's corporate but entrepreneurial. So you could be in a corporation, but the journey from corp to preneur, right? Being in that box with like an outline, like my friend Trisha trying to fill in the blanks of an outline. It doesn't work, right? When you're trying to write a composition that's 3 paragraphs. It doesn't work in a linear business model either. When in corporations today, the bigger issue is that people are burned out. It is a global epidemic, but it is like a major epidemic in the U.S. culture, and in corporate America. So I would be teaching and talking nonstop about that. That's what my new podcast, Corepreneur, is going to be about. And the Corecentryx business growth model is, what is the center of all you do? And is that tied to your integrity? So if my main core values as a human are being walked into my corporate halls every day, or into my pharmacy every day for that matter, am I aligned with my company's mission? And is that resonating with my personal mission? So teaching and speaking about that is, I think, really my next step, and freeing myself up from some of the administration to do so.
Okay, so let me see if I got this. So you've got a corporate executive, and their entrepreneurial spirit is pushed down because of the golden handcuffs? It's just too big of a jump to go to the entrepreneur, and are you talking actually an entrepreneur, or the entrepreneurial spirit that they can bring to the corporation?
Yep. If you're moving from corp to preneur, mindset wise, you can think, okay, I'm not going to stay in this corporate box anymore. And you can just rock the business that you're doing in a corporation, but with an entrepreneurial mindset. So that's one set of skills. The other set of skills is the exit strategy that, hey, I have this idea. It's bigger than a job can be. And I really want to do this, but I shouldn't quit my day job. So it's funny that when I'm speaking at conferences, women will always come up to me afterwards. They make a line and they go, here's the bigger issue. You mentioned this. We're doing too much too fast all the time. We are exhausted. And really, you don't want to be exhausted. You want to be energized, right? That's the E in core. So just to let a little snippet out there. But so to have an entrepreneurial mindset really means you're going to do things better and faster wherever you are. So whether that's starting your own business or being an entrepreneurial leader. I'm working with one client right now, and their pace has been so fast that it makes my head spin, and I know exactly what they need to do next, right? But it's like, whoa, it's like I have to teach them to put the brakes on with senior management, creating unrealistic goals for them or unrealistic expectations. And people don't know how to do that because it's like you don't know what you don't know. So they might know their thing, like they might know medical information and how to do it.
Is that a case of them being an entrepreneurial, but those above see what's happening and they just keep piling more on?
Right. But being able to kind of come back and communicate that or create business cases, just like an entrepreneur would. They have to be that inside because they're building a company with little to nothing given to them in their budgets. And then they have to ask for budgets, just like as an entrepreneur, maybe we would ask for an investor or a shark.
Yeah, it's interesting. On a smaller scale, my daughter is working for a tech company in town, and then just decided to get her real estate license switched to another broker in town. And she accidentally got loose on LinkedIn. And so her boss had a talking to her, and she's like, I don't really owe it to him to tell him the other, 128 hours a week, where things are going. And so what part do you hate about your day?
Gosh.
Relatively speaking.
What do I hate about my day? I almost want to say nothing.
Good for you.
I really love what I do. I get up, I'm jazzed, I'm ready to go on a Monday morning. You have to stop me and say it's dinner time. I'm just happy. I'm a happy entrepreneur. And I think that's part of me being a corepreneur. That's my name for it. It's like I'm just lit from the inside out, and I feel that way, and I'm not saying that if I didn't mean it.
Good for you.
Thanks.
Who are your business inspirations if you were going to read somebody or were kind of excited when their next kind of general business book came out? What author would that be?
I've had some great mentors in my life, and some that I've chosen, years ago, and some that I still choose in my life. And I've been a mentor to a lot of people. And some of my mentors are Tony Robbins, Sage Levine, Allie Brown, Carrie Wilkerson. And, I was just in Nashville with Carrie last week. We just recorded a podcast, and Allie and I were together a couple times this year. I have been in and out of Tony Robbins, his stuff. Like, I would say probably if he was bringing out another finance book or business mastery, because as a business owner, you have to master every area of your business. Right. That includes your finances. You have to master your money, your message. And so all of them have been something different to me. So I think Allie will have a book coming out, and I'm looking forward to that. I have my book coming out in tandem with them. So it's good.
What's your book about?
My book, it will be about I don't know what the publisher will end up calling it, but it'll be the Corepreneur. It'll be about that. Whatever they call it at the time. They always say, let the publisher name it for you, because they really know marketing. And so we'll maybe have to change some things with websites or whatever later on. But that's what one of my mentors said, just let it go. I'm like, it's true. It's like it takes a village to raise a message, and a message that's really going to get out.
My wife didn't let me just name our kids though.
It's a joint effort.
Did you ever walk across the coals for Tony?
I sure did. I'm a fire walker. Did? Yeah. You
know what they say? Because he got in trouble for that a couple years ago when it was too hot or something. Oh. But they say that walking across Legos is worse.
I bet.
I read that on the news a couple months ago. They said that's actually harder. What would you do, Anne, if you were not allowed to progress with any business ideas for a year, and someone said you have to take a sabbatical and you really can't improve yourself? I know there's not the fine line, because as you improve yourself as a person, you're improving your business self too. But what would you do if someone said take a sabbatical for a year?
I think it would be great advice. I'm thinking potentially, and of course it depends on the context at that moment. I don't know what I'd do with myself.
Yeah, what would you do for a year? That's what I'm getting at.
I think I would receive. I'm a receiver, right? So it's ideas that you can't stop. I would probably journal. I'd probably write, and then I'd probably plan it all out so that when go time came again, it's ready. So a small version of that is taking a couple weeks off, or taking, even in your business, a mini sabbatical, and saying, let me take a month, because you're going to come back really fresh. So even though I went to work, for example, at Baxter and Baxalta for those 18 months, 2 years, that was a sabbatical for me from my business, even though I was working full time. Yeah. But like coming back, it was like, boom, the ideas it was a trajectory that I couldn't stop.
I've always said it'd be cool to have like 26 jobs a year, like 2 weeks being a truck driver, 2 weeks building houses. That'd be kind of cool. What do you mean by being a receiver? Just waiting for inspiration, you mean?
Yeah, receptive to inspiration, to new thoughts, new ideas, maybe a new way of expressing an idea that right, your particular niche can define. Everybody is out there with a message, and we don't have to be a Me Too or copy anybody else's message. Yeah. Right? The thoughts that are coming into your head, Mike, are just as strong and valid as the thoughts that are coming in mine. And there's a way that you can express it that I would never be able to. So I feel that we should honor people's ideas. And when those ideas come, people, especially entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, hold themselves back from writing that book or creating that masterpiece or running that business the way they can really see it, because of fear or doubt or self-doubt or second guessing themselves. So to be receptive means you need to get quiet. You need to pause. You need to get still, and you need to listen. There is a higher voice inside. I don't know what, you call that, but I think we're in such a bombarded age of screens and messaging that if my website isn't as good as yours, I don't look at anything else. I just don't care about other companies. I don't believe in competition. I don't have a mindset of anything else but partnership and fluidity. And so part of that fluidity is being open, like a vessel, to receive information and wherever that comes from, whether it's just the little light bulb idea, if that light bulb hovering over your head, or maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's a God idea. I don't know what people call it, but it's real. And I think that I've just been a conduit of those type of ideas, and I have been not afraid to execute and put them to work. And that's what makes you successful, just doing it over and over and over. And if you don't, succeed at first, you try again and you try again. And then, as John Maxwell says, after 20 years of really hard work, one day you'll be an overnight success.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and you don't know when you're going to use stuff. And I know that, for example, Ann, you and I were talking before we went live here about, the podcasting, and you just don't know on a simple scale. There might be something that I do by flipping a switch or learning what adapter to use or something, that if I didn't have that knowledge from a lot of failed attempts to do something years ago, I might have gotten stuck at that point now, and it might have been another time to say, screw it, I'm not doing it. But you just never know. And that's more figurative of the things, the people you meet and the things you do, and your failures and your things that you need to forgive yourself and forgive others. All of those, God doesn't really waste incidences. Everything, I think, Everything works out for the good somehow. What would you tell like a high schooler right now, like a senior in high school? What would be your advice to them?
Pick something and then be persistent, and then let it change when it needs to change. But pick something, right? You can do so much with so many degrees. Our podcast today is a perfect example of that, right? Mike, you and I, we're both Y swimmers. We're both podcasters. We're both pharmacists. We're both entrepreneurs. And those are all different hats. Those are all different roles. Mm-hmm. So that's the advice that we gave our son, Ian. And this is my youngest. This is my stepson, Ian. He is just going into engineering. I'm like, just get through it. Just get the degree, right?
Yeah.
Because I see in him a natural gifting and talent for teaching. Mm-hmm. That's his ability that's built into him. From the time he was a kid, he'd be able to teach me how to play a video game that there's no other way I would have learned, because he's so patient. So I said, you'll get in, and you might not be that math guy. So don't worry about the things that are not your strengths, but you'll get in, and your strengths will lead you into a training position. You don't necessarily have to be an educator in the education system to use your teaching gift. So those abilities will just come and shine through. But do some self-searching, pick something, and then learn about yourself along the way. There's a lot of great personality tests and those things that can guide you. So one of those great tests that I would recommend to any high schoolers is a book it's probably on the back shelf somewhere. It's called Do What You Are. And I cannot remember the Thesans, I think. Can't remember but Do What You Are, look it up. It's a personality test. But any of them, the Myers-Briggs, all of those are great tools.
Yeah. So they pick something, and it could be that they pick it and they move. And what it seems like you're saying is they might pick one of 10 different paths, and that really doesn't matter, because it's all going to be, they're going to use all of it to fulfill themselves. You're proof of that with your different educational paths along the way and so on.
They pick, and then it moves and it morphs. And if you just let it be in the direction of your strengths and you're persistent to where you want to go, then it manifests.
Tell us a little bit more about I'm just going to call it a women thing. It's, as soon as I hear it's for women,
That's so fine. You just zone out. That's fine.
It's not for me. So I just call it a woman thing. But just tell us a little bit about how's it feeling? How's it going? And what are you excited about? Are you going to try anything differently?
The Corepreneur podcast. And although many and probably most of my guests will be women, there are men that I consider corepreneurs. So in the book that's about the corpreneurial experience, I have tons of man examples too. So you can read the book. And the podcast is also really coming out to say, you are one of my mentors, or you're someone I really want to have a conversation with, because you're a corepreneur. You are leading from the inside out, from a passion that is unquenchable. And as a result, you've already built, a multi-million-dollar business out of it, or you've started something that is so big and so bold. So for example, if you've heard of Jennifer Brea, right? She's had a tremendous TED Talk. She's a patient advocate because she is a patient. So, hey, why not just whip up a film and go to the Sundance Film Festival and win some awards and play big? These are people who are playing big, and it's because they are so driven to what they care about. Just like RxER, we're running down the halls of rare disease, right? And we want to connect what we do in medical affairs with something higher and bigger. And that's that next part of it, is that the Corepreneur and the Corecentryx business growth model that I created through RxER that was launched last year, it's a business model. So it's got all the 10 parts of a business model. And I do that all the time, but it was like a light bulb moment. So for example, there's a life balance wheel exercise that if I put a wheel in front of you, let's just say we draw a circle on a piece of paper. I'm going to do this visually for people. A mental exercise in awareness so that you can see where you are in terms of where you want to go. So I have a goal, for example, let's just say I draw a circle on a piece of paper, and one of the slices of pie that I draw maybe 3 or 4 lines in that slice of pie, right? Like let's look at it like a piece of pie. One of those pieces of pie maybe is my health. And let's just say I want to lose 30 pounds. And I know that putting that real pie in my mouth is not going to help me lose those 30 pounds. So I know better, but are my actions going to take me to where my goal says it is? Because most people make silly resolutions every January 1st and then don't get there. So this is a temperature gauge or a tool that businesses can use to see every facet of their business. But then you're the business owner or the business, initiator if you're in a corporation. And you're the one that has to do that business. So if you're coming into work with your junk all day, right, and maybe a bad relationship, or you're dealing with a health issue, or you're hurt because you're dealing with a special needs child, or any of these really human examples that make us the employees or masters of our businesses, you have some alignment work to do to make sure that you're operating where you need to be at full capacity as a person. And then that company gets the rest of you that is operating in alignment with their purposes. So, right, you're a person of integrity, whether at work or home, and you're leading from within, jazzed, juiced, happy, and ready to, not judge yourself. So regardless of situation and circumstance, there's still a way to move through everything with joy and a good plan. And that's what our business growth model is all about. So that's exciting. That's what the book's going to be about too. That
is exciting. I like when joy hits the last word of it. There's a lot of people running through things without joy, it seems. So that's a cool way to wrap that up.
I have a sticky note. You can see it, but our listeners can't. And it's on my desk. And it says on the bottom of, the sticky note, just a few things that I remind myself of daily: mitigate stress and maximize joy.
Mitigate stress and maximize joy. Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, Ann. Nice talking to you.
Mike, nice talking to you too.
Thanks, Ann. I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, we'll talk again soon.